want to talk to you about right now. Right now, at this exact moment, you might be feeling something. Not excitement, not confidence, something closer to doubt. Maybe you've been studying for months and your English still feels shaky. Maybe you understand more than you used to, but it still doesn't feel like enough. Maybe you're tired and you're wondering if this is even worth it anymore. I know this feeling. Not because I remember it vaguely from years ago, because I felt it deeply, many times. And I want to tell you something about what was actually happening during those moments when I felt furthest away. My name is Emma, and this is Train Your English Brain. Let me tell you about a specific night. I was maybe 8 months into learning English seriously. I had studied hard. I had memorized hundreds of words. I understood grammar rules. By any objective measure, I had made real progress from where I started. But that night, I felt like a complete failure. I had tried to have a casual conversation with a foreign friend, and it went terribly. Not because of one big mistake, but because the whole thing felt exhausting and slow. I kept searching for words. I kept pausing awkwardly. Every sentence felt like work instead of like something that could naturally come from my mouth. I sat alone that night and told myself something I genuinely believed in that moment. I'm not cut out for this. Other people learn languages more naturally. Maybe I should just accept that fluency isn't for me. I actually considered quitting entirely, not because I hadn't made progress, but because the progress I had made didn't feel like enough, and I couldn't see how I would ever actually reach the point where English felt natural instead of exhausting. What I didn't understand that night is something I need to tell you directly. I was not further away from fluency in that moment. I was actually very close to something important shifting. I just couldn't see it yet. Here's what I eventually understood about progress in language learning, and it's something most people never quite grasp until they look back much later. Progress is almost never noticeable while it's happening. This sounds like a cliché, but it's true in a very specific way that matters enormously. Your brain is changing constantly. New connections are forming, new pathways are being strengthened, but these changes are happening at a level you can't directly perceive in the moment. You can't feel your neurons rewiring themselves in real time. What you can feel, very clearly, is frustration that your progress isn't visible yet, that you're not fluent yet, that speaking still feels hard. You focus on the gap between where you are and where you want to be, and that gap feels enormous, unbridgeable. But the gap is not actually as big as it feels right now. And the thing that's about to happen, the moment when everything starts clicking, when English suddenly feels less like translation and more like actual thinking, is often very close, even when you feel furthest away. I want to tell you about a woman named Sofia, because her story proves this more clearly than my own. Sofia came to me after 6 months of self-study and told me almost exactly what I felt that night. She said, "Emma, I've studied so hard and I'm still so far away. I don't think I'm going to make it." We talked about her learning, and everything she described sounded like real, solid progress. Improved listening, better vocabulary, more natural pronunciation. But she was measuring herself against fluency, against native speakers, against some imaginary final destination. And from that perspective, yes, she still had far to go. I told her something, and I want to tell you this too. Sofia, tell me, could you have had this conversation about your progress 6 months ago? She paused and said, "No, absolutely not. 6 months ago, I couldn't have understood half of what we've talked about today." Then I said, "Do you see? You didn't fail. You're just standing too close to see how far you've come." This is the thing about progress that nobody mentions clearly enough. The closer you get to real fluency, the more aware you become of everything you still don't know. Early learners often feel more confident because they don't yet know how much they don't know. More advanced learners feel less confident because they suddenly see the vastness of what remains. This switch from not knowing what you don't know to clearly seeing it is actually a sign of progress, not failure. It's your perspective shifting as you get closer, but because it feels like less confidence, not more, people often interpret it as going backwards instead of forwards. You're not going backwards, you're just finally close enough to see the destination clearly, and that clarity can feel discouraging until you realize it's actually proof you're very near. So here's what I want you to do if you're feeling that doubt right now. First, stop comparing yourself to some imaginary future version of fluent you, and instead look back at yourself 6 months ago, 1 year ago, whenever you started. Can you do things you couldn't do then? Can you understand things you couldn't understand? Can you produce sentences that would have been impossible before? If the answer is yes, then you are not failing. You are progressing. The progress is real, even if it doesn't feel like enough yet. Second, understand that the confidence gap you're noticing, the way you suddenly feel less sure as you learn more, is not a sign you're moving backwards. It's a sign you're moving forward, and your perspective is finally catching up enough to see more clearly. Third, and most importantly, keep going through this phase. This is the phase where almost everyone wants to quit. This is the phase where the progress is invisible but real. This is the phase right before things start feeling less like constant struggle and more like actual communication. You don't need to feel ready or confident or certain that you're making progress. You just need to keep showing up. Because the moment you do, the one where everything shifts and suddenly English starts feeling natural, that moment is closer than it feels right now. Much closer than you think. Sofia did keep going. She told me months later that she eventually reached a point where conversations felt almost easy, where she stopped translating and started just thinking in English, where the exhaustion gave way to something like natural flow. She said, "Emma, I'm so glad I didn't quit when I felt furthest away." You will be glad too, but you can only know that by continuing through this phase, the one that feels furthest away, the one that feels closest to quitting. You are not behind, you are not failing, you are not cut out for something different. You are in the invisible progress phase, the one where change is happening even though you can't see it yet. Keep going. The moment you're about to give up on is often the moment right before everything shifts. My name is Emma. I will see you in the next episode.